What's the worst thing your boss ever did? Did they chew you out for something you didn't do? Did they take credit for your work? Did they leave an unencrypted USB stick at a medieval times in Dallas that contained a mix of company secrets and questionable pornography on it? Okay, maybe that last one was a little bit too specific. My point is, if you worked at Gearbox Software, the studio that made these iconic games, then you would have worked for a boss like that. A boss exactly like that. Introducing Randy Pitchford II. Randy, as he's better known, got his start in the gaming industry working at 3D Realms on games like Duke Nukem. He then went on to help found Gearbox Software, where he's been the studio's CEO for more than 25 years. During that time, he's accrued a reputation as one of the most disdained figures in all of gaming. The list of things Randy Pitchford has done could fill a book. So let's start with one that's a little more well-known, when he assaulted an employee and gaming celebrity. For years, David Eddings was the voice actor of the beloved character Claptrap, often seen as the mascot of the Borderlands franchise.
You saved me! You hear that, you stupid tech lovers?
In 2019, David Eddings left Gearbox on bitter terms, citing Randy Pitchford as the reason for his departure, who rage-fired him in a manic fit. After leaving, Eddings had quite a few things to say. In an interview, he described an instance where Randy was giving a studio tour to 2K's president, Christoph Hartmann. While Eddings was in the recording booth reciting some lines, Pitchford allegedly burst in, pulled off his headphones, and gave him a wet willy. You know, he put his finger in his mouth and then into Eddings' ear in front of 2K's president. The pair kind of looked at each other startled, wondering what the hell Randy was doing. Then, at GDC in 2017, Pitchford allegedly assaulted Eddings at the event hotel. Pitchford was in the midst of an ongoing legal dispute over some things we'll get into shortly, but suffice to say that he and Gearbox were not looking good. At GDC, a man named Greg Richardson, who had previously been a part of a financing deal with Gearbox, had been inquiring about the price to buy Gearbox, a fact which came to Eddings' attention. When Eddings brought it up, Randy apparently got very upset, demanding Eddings tell him his source on the matter. Gearbox co-founder, Landon Montgomery, confirmed the allegations, saying, quote, "David leaned up to whisper something to Randy, and out of the blue, Randy shoves him. Hard." Shortly after GDC, Eddings was rage-fired and never paid the royalties he was owed. In fact, Eddings was never technically paid for his work as Claptrap either, as he was originally hired as a programmer. After losing one of the game's most iconic voices, Eddings went online and said he would still be willing to reprise his role as Claptrap, but would only do so if, quote, "Randy makes a public apology to me and pays me the royalties I'm owed." And just as a heads up, this phrase, "pays me the royalties I'm owed," is going to come up a lot in this video. Because, as it turns out, Eddings wasn't the only one who was promised a lot of money and then never received it. For years, Gearbox employees have been paid below the industry average in exchange for a profit-sharing system based on how well each game sells. The more popular the game, the more money each person gets. When Borderlands 2 shipped, employees made enough money to buy new homes and cars. They were able to dig themselves out of debt, pay off their medical bills, and generally change their lives for the better, which isn't something that's easy to do. I've seen what can happen if you don't have medical insurance, or if you're treated for something that's not within your coverage. It can cost you tens of thousands of dollars and potentially ruin your life. I've seen friends fall into sudden illness or get into an accident and had to watch them deal with the uncertainty of not knowing whether they're covered by insurance. The kind of stress it puts on them and their families can be terrifying. Thankfully, you don't have to navigate the healthcare system alone. With ZocDoc, the sponsor of today's video, booking a doctor's appointment has never been easier. ZocDoc is an app that connects patients and healthcare professionals. If you're someone like me who gets anxious over phone calls or making appointments, ZocDoc could be exactly what you need. At the touch of a button, you're able to search and compare local, in-network doctors from more than 150,000 providers across 50 states, and do so with peace of mind, knowing that you're not going to receive a surprise medical bill in the mail months down the road. The best part is that ZocDoc is free to use. It just makes every part of the booking process easier, and I'd highly recommend giving it a try. If you have something in your life that you're concerned about, don't put off getting it checked out. Use ZocDoc to help you get the help that you need. You can follow our link, which is in the description below, and take the first step to prioritizing your health. After all, it's the most important thing you've got. Now, where were we? Oh yeah. Borderlands 2 set some lofty expectations for Borderlands 3, not just in how well the game was going to do, but how much Gearbox employees could potentially make off of royalties. So when the Borderlands 3 hype train started rumbling along, people were expecting to make the same, if not more money, and use this as motivation to get the game done. Unfortunately, earning those bonuses wasn't going to be as simple as they assumed. According to Randy, Gearbox had grown a ton over the last few years. They'd opened a new studio, hired new employees, and put a ton of money into marketing, all of which ate into Gearbox's bottom line, which turned out to be a good call, because when Borderlands 3 released, Randy had to break the bad news that the game didn't quite meet sales projections. It was unfortunate, but Borderlands 3 just didn't sell that well. People weren't that excited for the game. It wasn't as polished as it could have been. Wait, what? What do you mean Take-Two reported that Borderlands 3 was the fastest selling game in 2K history? It sold 5 million copies in 5 days? It was nominated for the Best Action Adventure and Best Multiplayer Game at the Game Awards? No. You must be missing something. Randy was right. Borderlands 3 didn't sell as many copies as Borderlands 2, so they didn't make as much money. And if they didn't make as much money, the employees couldn't get paid. You're telling me they didn't sell as many copies because 2K signed a $146 million exclusivity deal with Epic Games, which meant Borderlands 3 didn't release on Steam until 6 months later? Okay, I think that $146 million might have made up some of the difference in sales numbers. Something here wasn't adding up. Borderlands 3 was a smash success, both critically and commercially, and surely the employees who made the game deserved some kind of compensation. So where did all that money go? Well, as it turns out, Randy was accused of stealing money from his employees. In 2018, a lawsuit was filed by Wade Callender. He was a lawyer, a veteran, and a childhood friend of Randy Pitchford, who served as Gearbox's general counsel for several years. The lawsuit opens with the statement, quote, "Randy Pitchford is a manipulative and morally bankrupt narcissist." During Callender's time as Gearbox general counsel, he helped Randy on numerous occasions. Once, he was instrumental in securing a multi-million-dollar financing deal for Gearbox, but was never fairly compensated for it. Then, he personally helped the Pitchford family get back nearly $1 million from an embezzlement scandal, which Randy never publicly thanked him for. So, when Callender tried to leave the company, Randy secretly canceled his family health insurance without telling them. They only discovered their lack of coverage when Callender's wife was unable to get her medication from her doctor. Again, I have to stress, Randy did this to a childhood friend and veteran. But there were other things in this lawsuit that were even bigger, one of which was a claim about a $12 million bonus that Randy received from Take-Two Interactive. This wasn't just a normal, hey, great work out there, champ, here's a heaping pile of money kind of bonus. This was a series of milestone bonuses meant to go towards the development of Borderlands 3. And it was recoupable, meaning upon the completion of the game, the money was expected to be paid back. But Randy didn't put the funds directly into Borderlands 3. Rather, the suit alleged that he accepted the bonus against the Gearbox employee royalty pool, and then diverted the money to his side company, Pitchford Entertainment, Media and Magic. Because the $12 million was paid against Gearbox's royalty pool, the responsibility of paying back the bonus fell on the employees rather than Randy. The suit says that, quote, because Pitchford agreed to the publisher's recoupable, payments to Pitchford Entertainment, Media and Magic will constitute payments to Gearbox, will be recouped by any royalties owed to Gearbox employees. Those employees and their families won't receive any of their accrued royalty or profit shares until their work repays Pitchford's bonuses to the publisher. It was essentially stealing from his workers. But that's not all. Randy then used the siphoned funds for some really weird things. The suit alleged that he and his wife would throw peacock parties at their home, which were private shows which included magic tricks, puppets, comedy, and, quote, adult men reportedly exposed in front of minors. What's that all about? When these allegations went public, what did Randy have to say? According to those working at Gearbox, they were told, quote, if they weren't happy with the royalty system, they were welcome to quit. Ultimately, the lawsuit was settled out of court, and the parties issued a very vague exoneration of wrongdoing for Randy Pitchford. But since both parties are mutually bound by confidentiality, there's no way to know exactly what went down. A neat and tidy way of handling the situation without actually having to accept responsibility. But let me be clear, these claims of siphoning funds, which would be enough to take down just about any other CEO in the gaming industry, wasn't even the worst thing in this lawsuit. This next story takes place at a medieval times in Dallas. You know, the restaurant where knights joust and sword fight while you enjoy a turkey leg and a mug of ale. After a night of roughhousing and revelry, Randy forgot a very important USB stick at the restaurant. A stick containing tons of sensitive information relating to Gearbox and Take-Two's business dealings, information about high-profile partners like Microsoft, Sony, 2K, and SEGA, financial reports, and future planned projects. Shockingly, this thumb drive wasn't only unencrypted, it didn't even have a password on it. But there was something else on the drive, something even worse. The USB was recovered by a medieval times employee. After realizing what they'd found, they reached out to Gearbox and returned it in exchange for some merch. However, when the drive arrived at the office, Randy was out of town, and it's likely that Gearbox employees had a chance to look at what their boss had been carrying around in his pocket. To those looking, it appeared Randy had, quote, a collection of underage pornography.
When the contents of the drive came to light, Randy didn't try to deny what he had. He openly admitted that, yes, there was lewd content on the drive, but he did clarify that the sex worker being featured was of the quote, barely legal variety, and therefore did not classify as underage. And to be honest, if you have to break it down into the technical categories of the porn you're watching, even if it's legal, it still feels really icky. Randy then went on to say that he only saved the video on the thumb drive because the camgirl performed some sort of magic trick in the video that he wanted to study privately. Like I said, technically not illegal, but still pretty weird, and not something you should be carrying around at medieval times. Somehow, the whole debacle got swept under the rug, and Randy stayed on as Gearbox's CEO. Still, you'll see it mentioned on Twitter all the time, as Randy is known as the medieval porn guy. And this brings us to one more big controversy, where Randy put out one of the coolest FPS demos of all time, and then totally bait and switched fans. Of course, I'm talking about Aliens Colonial Marines.
At E3 2011, this gameplay demo was shown. It was, for lack of a better word, awesome. Throughout the whole video, Randy cuts in and talks about the game, and right at the end, he casually says, "This is a section from Act 2 of the game," as if that wasn't one of the best FPS demos anyone had ever seen. The only issue? This entire section of gameplay was faked. When the full game came out 2 years later, this is what it looked like.
Hello, my honey. Hello, my rag. And just to put the cherry on it, the game's buggier than a big bug bugging out in a dune buggy.
From its core mechanics, to its artificial intelligence, to its visuals, this game is unfathomably terrible.
So what the hell happened? Well, the game was published by SEGA. They held the publishing rights to all video games based on the Alien franchise, and they reached out to Randy to see if Gearbox would be interested in making Aliens Colonial Marines. At the time, Gearbox was known as the studio that created the Half-Life expansions and the Brothers in Arms series, so it felt like a good fit. So Randy says yes, and they start working on the game in 2007. However, it was around the same time that Gearbox also started working on Borderlands. Randy was more invested in this new IP rather than Aliens, and began pulling developers off of Colonial Marines to work on Borderlands instead. The issue was that Randy wasn't telling SEGA what he was doing. In fact, he was actively lying to them about how many people were working on the game, so they'd keep sending milestone payments to fund it. All the while, SEGA's checks were going to pay the salaries of people who were actually working on Borderlands. In 2008, SEGA discovered the discrepancies and briefly shut the project down. But then, after Borderlands 1 came out in 2010, SEGA said, "You know what? You guys make great games and we trust you. Please finish Colonial Marines for us." They started sending more money, and Randy, being Randy, was ready to screw them all over again. As soon as the checks started coming in again, Randy started outsourcing the game to third-party developers, which included Demiurge Studios, Nerve Software, and Timegate Studios. All the while, he was using the money SEGA was sending to fund Borderlands 2. When Timegate received the project files for the game, what was supposed to be nearly 4 years of work, they were shocked to discover that basically nothing had been done. They were essentially starting from scratch. To make sure SEGA didn't catch on to what he was doing, Randy put together the E3 demo we showed earlier, a vertical slice that was not at all representative of the actual game. It wasn't until a few months before the game was set to release that Gearbox took the project back over to put the finishing touches on it. But by then, it was too late. There was no polishing this giant alien turd. Aliens Colonial Marines got panned on launch. It was nothing like what had been shown in trailers and magazines. The result was a class action lawsuit levied against SEGA and Gearbox, which ended with SEGA paying $1.25 million to the plaintiffs. That's right, Gearbox siphoned funds from them for years, and SEGA ended up footing the bill. How Randy got away with this is anyone's guess, but at this point, it's pretty much par for the course. In Randy's mind, he and Gearbox are the same thing. He is Gearbox. In a deposition, he said that, quote, damages to Gearbox and damages to Pitchford are one and the same, and that his personal taxes and Gearbox's are totally intertwined. With this kind of mindset, it's not surprising that he's able to jump through mental hoops to convince himself that it's okay to take advantage of the people around him. He is Gearbox, not the hundreds of people who work and make the games. And despite how he treated those close to him professionally and personally, under his leadership, Gearbox has managed to put out some really great games. And I guess that's why he's still there. After 27 years, Randy remains the CEO of Gearbox Software. Across almost 3 decades, he's become one of the game industry's most infamous, vocal, and kind of icky CEOs. And he's not shy about it either. When Borderlands 4 gets panned, Randy takes to Twitter and blames the players. When the Borderlands movie flops, Randy argues about the reception online. When someone brings up the Medieval Times USB stick, Randy flexes his knowledge of human biology. Ew. Like I said, the controversies Randy has embroiled himself in could fill a book. And if it weren't for the fact that Borderlands was such a powerful IP, his eccentricities would have likely caught up to him a long time ago.